I know we've gotten spoiled with being done by noon. I remember our board meetings going clear into sometimes 4. Yeah.
Jared, remember he talked.
Yeah, Jared did.
He did.
All right, so I get booted out. I need to join.
Yeah, it's a different Zoom link, guys, if anyone's joining via Zoom.
But then- That's kind of.
Let me in.
My apologies.
Thank you.
No, ours is 24, if I could get jumbled up in the middle of the day. That's-
Recording in progress.
Every device. All right, so appreciate everybody being here. I'm not in quite yet, but do we have it? Virtually. So we're going to, I'm going to start with an introduction here, and then we're gonna move into our Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there have been a lot of thought that went into it for me to move away from the OAR's chair. I'm going to be part of the OAR's continuously. I think with the new changes for our executive board and giving others the opportunity to step in and some leadership roles and guide us in directions that they can better guide us than me currently. I'm super busy, and it wasn't a decision that I made lightly. Let's put it that way. So taking pride, but we've got a good, well qualified individual, I think, that can help lead us in the direction we need to go. I mean, the stakeholders that are here always get great input. So I was at the one of them, and nothing I heard because what I did is a collaborative effort. So okay, with that said, I'll introduce myself, Micah Brown. I work for Locating Inc. I represent contract locating on the board, and this is the last day for me to be the board chair and be the OAR chair. I will pass introductions to my left.
Hi, I'm Melanie Lewis, with Four, represent regulated electricity.
I'm Paul Schmidt, work with Canby Excavating and representing the contract.
I'm Paul Tony, I'm with Left Incorporated. I represent taxpayers. Hey, we're good. I'm working for Comcast, representing cable TV. Representing the electric.
Vanilla, for the city of Portland, representing. 25,000.
Katie Linkey, working for Northwest Natural. representing natural gas.
Frank Clinton with One Call Concepts.
Jim Alton, Blanks, LLC, yes. Josh Hunts, Executive Director of OUNC.
Okay. Everyone would like to mute their phones for us here. I appreciate it.
I do.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, who's T Kane? Who joined us?
We do have an individual on, oh, we do have an individual on virtual. Would you like to introduce yourself? We're not sure if you're a board member disguising your name or a guest, so we appreciate you joining. If you can hear us. Okay. So first on the agenda here will be to approve the previous board meeting minutes, or not board meeting, but committee meeting minutes. Last month, I did look at this last night. Where's the bottom? There was an incomplete sentence. It was like he had meant to carry the sentence, but maybe, oh no, I think it was just the next line over. Keep going down further.
Back to the top there,
Back to the top.
right there.
Come on,
Shared screen show
above. I know.
the period there.
Oh, length of the, yeah,
Go down. I do think that I was missing the second line. It was just kind of skewed over with this, so I think it's a drag. But now that I think. But, other than that, punctuation, I'm not seeing anything else. Which is right there on B. I'll entertain a motion to do the minutes. Or accept the minutes. With that,
For no discussion, micro reference concerns about.
yeah, there we go. There it is. Thank you. I should just be quiet until you're done reading that. I thought it was being. Just a punctuation piece that was missing in that. Section. Okay. We'll never know. Okay, so let's get that corrected first here, so. Table. No discussion. Although we did have a link to. There was, I thought you were actually throwing a pen out there earlier. You said 5 hours. Sorry, I caught it. Maybe it was at the table. Okay, so with those adjustments, I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee minutes for November. I'm gonna need a motion to accept the minutes, but are we?
motion to accept the minutes
As
as
amended.
amended.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. to Accept the meeting minutes for November as amended. Second by Albert. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Accept the meeting minutes and get them posted. And that includes the video and all that. All right. So locate design. Revision we talked about earlier. I'm going to do a write-up. I've already got my notes on this. So I'll get that right up and I'll meet with, our new OAR chair, get all the information over to her. So she can carry it forward. And like I said, I'll be here, but, I think what we left, I mean, I know where we left off with this and, I know Scott's not here and I was hoping to have one of them here because I think where we need to go with this is we have a rule. Is there something that can be done operationally, as a requirement or a best practice at the call center? We could at least pose the question that if you don't need marks, can we give you information here that can help facilitate you obtaining class as builds, things like that. To kind of fall in line with the direct information request that Washington has without changing our rule. Was hoping that maybe Scott would want to take a stab at that and see what we can do because he knows the operations of the call center, what they can do in that respect without changing the rule. And we might have to change the rule. But as recommended prior, it would be ideal to see if we can do that without. So.
I think last meeting we confirmed they can.
Yeah, they did.
They did?
Yeah, that's what, that, it was my understanding that it can be done without us changing anything. So just get thoughts on homework.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
give us-
yeah. Well, Scott's not.
Give
here,
us some,
So that'll be recommendation, I guess, that they work on it, we take it. And
There's a number of things that we could do to promote it or
Yeah.
encourage it. So,
pretty much if I want to know who is it and they're saying, oh, wait, I want a day, can I call this ticket and just get a reply back? There are 8 utilities on your square or whatever.
it's done online. It's processed that way. You can enact it as operational process. It just takes it outside of the call center activities. We could, promote it on the website. We could promote it in some of the recordings probably. We could send out a free format message.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff that we could do to promote it.
Is,
how I envision it.
is this a cost for us? It should not be a cost for us and not for utilities either, because it's an automatic.
Well,
No, the way it works is it's an informational,
Yeah.
it just goes through the system. They have to do it online. We send them the contact information for those utilities or in that area. There's a process that we have to go through because that contact internally may be somebody different than for the locate through them. Maybe the engineering department or somewhere else. That information, that list for that contact then is information is sent to them. It's up to them to reach out to those entities to get their request. Nothing goes out to members.
Yeah.
Until a certain time period. At a certain time period, they can call back in with that number. And they can do a request for a locate, but it's not a dig locate. It's basically marks it. So it may be that they're only concerned about the gas company in that area. So they can send that request to the gas company and ask for marks at that time. They can't dig on those marks just for purposes of design. When they actually go to do the dig, they have to call in for a locate.
That's what we talk about.
and I think that's so how I envision it is that. Because this is, we can promote it all we want, but it's not gonna be out there for everyone. And so when they go, like they would normally do, and I take it and put in the header code, survey. Design, locate, that's when I would pop up and then get them.
Well, it would be automatic because they don't have to do this. This is voluntary. So that we could put a blurb up there to let them know there's another option that they.
Well, like a questionnaire, do you need marks? And then check the boxes. If you don't check those boxes, then it'll let you know you don't need a ticket, you just need this information.
No,
All you can do is help move them over that way. Yeah.
so
And that
Micah,
would
we're
that would
looking at
be,
design and locate. if this is for a company that's trying to do something in this area, and will like to know who is in this area. Who can they reach out? They will create this through a website. They're not gonna call in, it's not gonna be available to call in. They'll create, and they will get an automatic response, same way when I call in locates, it's gonna tell me you have 7 utilities. The only utility is gonna respond is this, and this. They will get a response back, that's what I'm thinking, a response back with all those utilities in that area. And then from there, it's gonna be his call what he wants to do with that. If he needs more steps, then he needs to do something else. Calling a lot, if he needs locates on the ground, he needs-
We can't, there's no way we're gonna be able to put a process in that sidesteps. It is a different process than entering what they usually do to get information. So, and that is to call in the survey design. So that's what they're going to do, and when that happens, when they do that, we either need to have a questionnaire on there that questions them on what their intent is. And if their intent is for just information. To know what utilities are there, then we don't generate a ticket, and that it moves them to a different section, is what I'm saying, and they're not at that point generating a ticket. But if they do need marks, whether we say, do you want marks, do you require marks or not? You know. Is irrelevant, I was just saying maybe a check off list rather than. Saying, do you want design information? Okay, now you're gonna move over here, you're gonna get a ticket.
I thought that's what we're trying to do.
That really is to that point. I mean, the whole idea is like, how do we communicate? There's this other process available.
Mhm.
Like you've been doing pre-design locate requests for years and years and years. Now we have this, if you only want information.
Yeah.
Or contacts at those. facilities.
Utilities, yeah. That's what I thought we were doing, because right now I can call, I just called him last week, a free survey ticket. That it will get located. It'll take 14 days or 10
That's why I
days.
said, do you need marks? If you say that I need marks, then move to the regular.
So you want to use the existing free survey and do a yes or no.
Well, how else are they
Yes,
gonna do it?
locates, no locates, and consider the no locates as a design ticket, because you're gonna have the same
There's
information.
a lot of tickets that are called in for design locations and in March it says maps only needed. So if that was an option there for them, when they went to do their design locate, then
We'll
it
go
takes,
to Frank.
that's a facilitating method for them to
I got it.
redirect them.
So, Frank, is there a way, if I call a free design ticket, I just called him last week. If I call a free design ticket, to have an A and B, yes or no? On the ticket, if I don't need locates from the ground, consider as a maps only,
Currently not.
currently not, it needs to go through a process.
Why don't we internally
Look
talk
into
it
that,
over,
okay,
see what options we are, I understand where you're coming from, I understand, what the process is, where you hope to go. And let's see what options we have, and how we can promote it. You can't, since you can't do away with what's here. I think the next best thing is how can we promote it so that people will hopefully move this way, because if they don't need marks, they should.
And they don't need it, and going about it in a completely different process, that has to be educated, that's gonna take a while to find, that's not gonna solve issues.
Right, and the other thing with that is that facility operators have to buy into it. So if it's a voluntary process for them, if they don't buy into it and they don't give us that contact information to where they want those requests to go, then it's going to fall on space. If Northwest Natural is the only one who participates in that program, they're not going to use it. So
I'd like to see them call options. Flow charted and the avenue for to make the request. And then that way we can make recommendations on outreach and particular things like that. I think that's what is offered. We need to see what options are there. Like you guys have, so if you guys can put together a presentation, a screenshot, this is where we're gonna put those changes. This is the menu of where it's gonna go, and then that way.
or here are the options.
yeah,
Just a presentation on what
Sure.
the options are.
Understand all this is going to take time. This
Yeah.
is not something you're gonna turn off, because even getting that contact information from the facility operators, it's gonna take a while, but
And I'm envisioning something as we talk about this. Do they participate in design requests? Yes or no? Like, just like we have status for positive response or enhanced positive response. Does the operator participate in design request? Yes or no? That way it's very clear. So that's what I'd like to see, you know, an example of what can be displayed so we can have these operations.
Yeah. it's only if we write rule, find the right rule, but if you can't, so. Okay, yeah, that's. Yeah. So, much appreciated, Frank. Nothing more on that. Move on. Okay, so we did talk about this. Kevin did bring us language. We sometimes talk in circles in this community. And we kind of get nowhere, and we have to just move on to the next topic. So I'm hoping that this next year we'll be able to get what we need to get. Did we add Kevin's attachment as part of the meeting minutes?
I never got it to the,
Okay,
I didn't keep it. I just manually typed it, we left it on the screen, I thought.
the same day.
I reached out
Yeah, so I guess you could go to the recording and pause. And take a screenshot of it to make it part of the record, but it has been recorded, so, and that was just. That wasn't well thought out, I mean, I was just throwing that out there, and I'm not gonna do that again to the chair. If I'm gonna bring it forward with the other, I'm not gonna. Not gonna present it like that, but you could just not fair to this group and our time.
I think there's a couple things there. But what I would like to do is I would like to give I'd like to just have that. I'll talk to her, we'll talk it over, I know. I want to bring her up to speed on the street. Where we're at this point. So if there's not any opposition to that, if there's something you guys want to add, any questions on that? And I think the initial recommendation, we don't have to change the rule. And I think there's some things in there after the fact. I'm satisfied with it. We do have it in the rule, but we do have it without making any changes. I know that's an option, but there's a few others. So. We can pull it out, and I can show you where I believe that, you know, I mean, before we had wanted to change located one to practice, you know, I mean, clarifying it and stuff like that, but I think we have the need in there. That's why I think, but I'll talk to her and let her know what we've talked about. That you often say. Any opposition? Okay. Okay. The length of a ticket, we did talk about that in the ticket already. So, do we have enough information to say we honored the motion to put the 750 feet in place and recommend that? No. No, correct? I'm just walking through the weeds here.
I mean, you saw the discussion that was just mentioned when we talked about 2 miles and Johnny and what the stuff that rule against, you know. Does it make sense 70 feet for, you know, going outside the city on the dirt road or whatever? It's 70 feet is something that if you want to make this rule for everybody. Maybe
Well, that's up to
maybe we
discussion.
can look into an exemption. Or something on it.
I think our initial intent was to make it rule so that we enforce it as far as the distance goes. And to deter excavators from falling in those spots. But if they want to recall a ticket, I mean, you can't stop them from that.
Yeah.
We can stop the call center now, even with NXT, we can stop them from, okay, stop, you need to call them, we're not gonna auto generate 50 tickets. Or, that kind of locate. You need to input them individually. I mean, at some point, somebody's gonna get tired of that, you have to get that. But I mean, to what extent, I don't know, what it does economically, is it's a more revenue for the board. For me, as a contract locator, there's no benefit. With our contracts, there's no benefit to add an extra ticket. It was never that way. So that wasn't a driving force for my state. It was more or less the complaints that were coming in from Michelle and others and myself. We all deal with it. All operators deal with it. All, if they're located in their contract located, deal with it. It's just excessive. But what's the real, what are we gonna get from putting a 750 wheel line? We already have one at the call center, which Scott explained earlier. It's just a default type of footage that if they call something in across town, they can't fit it on one ticket. It makes sense if it's more than 750 feet. As you mentioned earlier, if they spot locate, they put their spots on it. It sits outside the 750 feet. That's another ticket, an auto chip is correct.
I don't know what the current rule is for NXT, what they input for the business rule, but I do know that at the call center, at least the way it was, is that if you were doing pole replacements, if those poles were further apart than 750 feet, that would break up the ticket. Didn't mean that you couldn't do a 10-mile long ticket if it was a continuous route. It just meant that if there's a break in that continuous route more than 750 feet, that broke the ticket. So I don't know how NXT is set up because you got to have some parameter around that. I don't know what that is right now.
Yeah, that's what I meant by spot.
Yeah.
One choice of words. But yeah. So what does the committee think?
Could there be a possibility of looking at an example of that on XT to see if I was a contractor and I had
10-mile tickets.
We can do it right now. Do you guys still have the link for with that quasi try ticket?
Sandbar.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think it's live in our.
Oh, okay.
That's website.
Yeah, it is. And I think I have it online where we could choose a location here. I've done it before. It generated this one ticket. But that wasn't the start. So I haven't tried it since. No, it was
you can look at an existing
10-foot
ticket.
radius of this area.
Those search and status look at an existing ticket, that it's longer and show you.
Let me send a text and see if I can.
Yeah, I mean, I did it. It was clearly over 700 feet away. But
I know there's been discussion about. For, kind of like what precedent they're setting. Has there been other? Like looks into what other states are doing.
Yeah.
And achieving success.
yeah, this has been on the topic for a long time. And I'm so eager to just.
Well,
Yeah.
concepts is in the top states, so there's probably states that are having success.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with their ability too, like as far as enforcing it or having a water.
Some of them dictated in their law. Size of a ticket, some of them it's by whatever the board has directed us. Some of it's different in urban settings versus rural settings. Most of them are smaller than what we could do here. For example, they don't do anything more than a mile or in town, maybe a block. It's all determined what the order is.
I can share that data. I got it. I just don't have enough flashing. But
Yes, I mean, I think it's interesting to see what the other states have set up, but then also what then that impact is out in the real world. Like, is it actually helping with, you know, not having these large scale tickets?
And that's something we didn't touch on, is it, what's the effect, right? So
Yeah.
what we did do, it was a big poll, it was a big data. Scott's in. Might have been Greg's in, but either way, it was a pretty big data pool. We just really couldn't isolate type of work from the footage that was being called in. It was hard just the way that the system pulled that down. Now, I don't know if that's different now for NXT. That might be different. It might be able to get those data points and pull those out into a spreadsheet easier for what we were wanting to see. So
Yeah, you can put any kind of rule in place, but is it effective?
oh,
You know.
Is it, is it effective? Is it actually preventing damage? Which is another aspect of it.
Usually the discussion revolves around making smaller tickets, getting locates done on top. It's not necessarily, we're not looking at making them smaller to get less damages, or making them a smaller. Thought process is to ensure that they're done.
Easier than favors.
shorter line. Yeah. I know for the fact that my guys still say it's all. This is 2,000 feet. So unless they've got. You're looking at, you know, a docket of this many tickets, you want to get through, well, let's do today, you know. Waiting to grab for tomorrow, and that 2,000.
What is that 2,000 feet of paint marks? What do you mean? So right up, you know, it's much spray paint that you put on that. Is that worth? Is that cheap? I mean,
Oh, it's more. It's more.
you know, what I'm getting at is if they call in a 2,000 to put posts around, you know, 5 feet around each post. Does that actually add up to 2,000 feet of actual paint on the ground?
If they request 2,000 feet, doesn't matter what they're doing, in that, whether they're putting poles or whatever the case may be. If they call for it,
So
then
you
it
mark
has to
in
be marked.
between 500 feet with no facilities, will continue to write no PP&L.
So, well, in that case, if it was just electric area, I'm sure they would go ahead and do it because they know the area. But as far as gas is the ground, and that's a lot of the power in your areas, it's all on the ground. If you know your areas, the guys know the areas. So I would say that's a small fraction.
Is your question, they have 5 poles. And they want 20
2,000
feet, they want 20 feet around each pole, but it's 2,000, they call in a 2,000 foot level. Are they marking the pole 2,000 feet, or are they marking 20 feet around each of those 5 poles?
I
Is that
just-
what you're-
Yeah, I took what he said and he said that's, you know, that's a 2,000 foot locate. I'm going, for the types of work that I've seen on tickets, I can see where they would say, you know, they would mark 20 feet on either side of the pole and then move on to the next. That's
Yeah.
not 2,000 feet.
That's what I'm gonna do. So it all depends, but if I called in and I will put 2,000 feet on the town line, they will locate 2,000.
We have to.
They have to. They're
It's on the
required.
ticket,
You mark what is.
Unless
there.
there's an agreement.
Yeah,
You mark what is there.
what's in the ground?
Which,
And if there's nothing in the ground, they're required to put no, whatever.
unless we're in Silverton. I mean, if you're in your bigger cities, unless you're in Silverton, things are, a lot of things are overhead. It's an older town. There's been so. The above ground gas there, Mount Ailes here too. In the alleyways, it's cut up.
Over the bridges,
Yeah. But in Salem and in Portland and in our bigger populated areas, the times that that you'll see a 2,000 foot locate where we may not have to is when they ask for the right, east right. And our gas mains are on the left, so, you know, west. So if that's the case, but you're taking me literally when I say the word 2,000 feet, you know, on a specific scenario. I mean, that's just a small fraction where we actually show up and there's not something marked there for that distance. Because a lot of the time, if a single operator goes out and all they have to do is look at their facility, I can see where they have a little bit more of that scenario possibly. But for someone like us, you know, which is the bulk of the force out there working, we have.
Maybe what Kevin's trying to say is, I saw
today, obviously, right down the road, someone had proposed something that's supposed. Or it was very well marked, say a 20-foot radius around that pole, drag past it, there's the looking for it, the white paint. for it. But I want the 6 poles in that 2,000, once you locate that 20-foot radius, that pole will go 400 feet, 20-foot radius, that pole, 400 feet, 20-foot radius. You're not marking in between the poles,
No,
you're just marking.
it's how the
20
ticket struck.
radius.
So if the ticket says mark from intersection here, 2,000 feet east, we're doing anchors for poles. So immediately our guys go and call up and say, hey, which poles are we doing anchors on? Which is actually, you know, if as long as there's agreement, then, you know, we document it on both ends. But
I think it will tell them what to look. That's why white paint and description on, they will tell them what to look. But if there's no information and to the ticket by the time. So these have modifications,
yeah, I mean,
more previous.
And that's why white paint would help him, because if they called us up and said, mark the 5 poles with white paint in this 2,000 feet, they know what to look for and only mark that out.
It's yes and no, because you say mark 5 poles. Yeah, I marked them. It's really hard to miss 5 poles. I mean, come on, if you look at that. Radius, this pole, 25 feet around this pole. If I don't put white marks on the
I'm
ground
saying
next to
you
the
do.
pole, do you think the locator will,
I'm saying if you do,
if I don't, do you think the locator will miss that pole?
I think if you don't put white paint down,
Right.
you gotta mark the whole.
there's no ribbon on that pole, and there's no white paint, you don't have a pole number, and that happens a lot.
If you have a pole number? I give you
I'm
the
not
pole
gonna
number
look-
and
You're probably
everything.
not gonna look at you.
GPS and everything.
Oh, if it's listed in the ticket and there's a pole number there, yeah, we're finding that pole. We have our plots, I mean, we have our, you know, I've built some things that we can look at to reference that, but a lot of the times, no.
So what about the? Is this for all of it, but if you're using the polygons, radius tool inside XT,
Then you should see a picture of what poles they are.
yeah, there should be a circle or polygon around that pole.
Whether it's white painted or not, you should still see the pole.
Yep.
As long as you have that image, that satellite image that you referred to, then that's the directions. You're not gonna have a 2,000-foot route on that ticket. You're gonna have description on that NXT ticket of the 5 poles and where they are. And you're also gonna have a link to the satellite imaging and the map imaging of where those poles are on that route.
You know, we have a training man, and I was just thinking, you know, Scott and OCC puts on, you know. Offer this option to come over and go through the facility. I mean, they're just a day in the life of the locator, but for everybody in our band that wants to contribute. And then kind of go through the process of what they deal with, because all these are, you're correct, and you're correct, and you're correct. But I'm not sitting here bringing this up because I just want to argue down the committee. I mean, this is real life stuff. Michelle, which I reason not coming in here multiple times saying that, you know, we have issues, this is an issue, a 40-mile locate. I can probably pull the locate up, it's longer than 40 miles. Shouldn't have bring that up. We the next 2 days too, so. And it really can, and I appreciate that she's kind of bearing the torch for her contractor down there. I really do. Because it's not just one issue, it's multiple issues. And we don't have rules that really dive into regulate what excavators are supposed to be doing and what they can and can't do. What we're doing is we have a lot of rules that regulate what operators are supposed to do, what they're bound by law to do, but it's kind of open game for excavators. We've done some good things. I'm not saying that we haven't. I think 45-day rule is a good rule. On the other flip side of that, when we entered it, it's like part of that sometimes you want to take back, but I think it was good when we did it. I'm okay with squash. Look, there's no benefit to argue and to have it in here if it's not getting making any headway. If we're not moving anywhere with it, we just need to squash it. Just if we have done other things. The ticket.
I think if we start with requesting white paint, I think particular language is gonna be.
So I would defend locators as an excavator, because we work with specific locators a lot. We have relationships and we'll call and say, hey, you know, it's not through a dashboard or email, we usually call them direct, say, hey, what's your not, you know, that's stuff out here. Okay, well, I'll do it. Cool. So we don't want to show up to a job and all of them, we're sitting there. Can't do anything.
Call us 40-mile located, I'll guarantee you show up on site. You might not learn.
But with the NXT program that we have, and it's not. So here's the polygon. Can I go, is there 7-bit? There's no, I can just expand and expand and expand and expand.
It's a business model on the system.
So when you draw your polygon, you might draw your whole project, but based on business rules, it could be one ticket. Or it could be, 50 tickets based on what you tell us to put as a business rule to break that down. Whether that's gonna help the field people or not, I don't know. In some cases, it probably would. Some cases it may not. May help the excavator manage that project better because they could break out the portions that they're actually gonna be doing the work in and release those tickets, keeping the other ones in reserve until they're ready to work and then release them. So that you're not calling in for updates that whole 10 miles of them. I think it would help in updates. Because I think that's the real benefit because it's broken down. Now you can, I'm done over here. I don't have to call that one back in. I don't have to update that. I'm here. I only have to update the ones that I'm actually.
Yeah.
But it requires excavators to actually manage something. Some do, some don't.
And if you make this system to where they have to interact more with management.
And the system does that. It has basically what Micah has is a ticket management system. Well, the excavators on their end, if you've been used NXT, you have my tickets where it tracks stuff. You can see when you posted, you can see when it's about ready to expire. You can set parameters so that it doesn't release that ticket until 5 days later, if you use 3-year project. All that is part of the contractor ticket management part of it that allows you to manage that more easily. Right now, you just have to remember it, or in the past, all you have to do is remember it. Now you have a system that's actually prompting you through the process if you use it. If you don't use it and you don't manage with it, then it's not going to do anybody any better.
Yeah, unless of course users to actually follow in specific parameters. Those of us that are respectful operators, excavators, are going to do our due diligence. But those that are smaller, just gonna get it done, they will do some of the exceptions to benefit themselves.
Well, the piece of it is you have to convince those contractors that if I put in this effort, it makes the system overall work better. So I'm gonna get my tickets done on time. I'm gonna get my marks on time. Everybody's doing their part. But if you have somebody who doesn't want to put in the effort and does a mile-long locate when they're only doing 2 poles in that mile, because they don't want to do the effort of identifying where these poles are, then you all suffer. It's the weakest link.
It really is. And I mean, I've got a client, that their engineering department call in the entire subdivision. They need to rebuild. That's not a good guy. And that's one of the reasons why in 19 we incorporated the large project under the design work as well. Because we actually passed it. No. We added it in 19 to the rules to the survey design. Yeah. So obviously, the intent of that but I lost my train of thought. Thanks, Kevin.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Now just.
So I think like, when you were talking about having using virtual, I as an excavator, some of the subdivisions, this water project, maybe this medium sized projects. You have an admin on the locate, you can locate, reducing the price as much as possible. I don't agree that somebody should be able to get on to XT. Just take a polygon and stretch it as long as they can. Like one locate ticket, I don't think that's fair.
Why not? I did 1 mile in about 3 days. How many, should I put that in one ticket or should I put,
I think there should be a.
you know, should I do today 1 ticket for 1 mile, tomorrow another ticket for another mile? It's, we talking about 3 days.
But they don't do
It
that.
takes
Your
me 2
contractors
days.
don't do that. Your contractors don't do that. This does not do that. I want to
Yeah,
bring up names, but this does not do that. And a lot of others do not do that. They'll call in all 10, and they're
Oh,
still in
we don't
Woodburn.
wanna
They're
go.
still in Woodburn.
we don't wanna
I
go.
know, but they'll call in 10 at a time in the
But you know what?
25 to 3,500 feet long.
Yeah, you know what? Because most of these tickets are 7 days old. So he calls in today, 7 days later, he doesn't have the paint on the ground.
In what?
7
It
days.
stems from one. it
7
stems
days,
from-
then
It
it's,
stems from
it's
one thing.
everybody.
It stems from the beginning.
So the rule over there, because now you open the discussion, the rule was you call your locate 7 days in advance. 7 days in advance, because depending what you do, it's where you move your, my God, you have to understand their pain when they have millions of dollars on the field and they cannot move that equipment because they don't have locates on the ground. Because they're depending on a pickup truck, they cannot come there. And I have $1 million equipment that stays in front of a large, I got traffic, I got flaggers, I got everything in the world on side.
But you know what it takes to
I
do
know.
that. So, I mean, I can't take my 20
No.
guys in the valley here,
I know,
north of Eugene and say, hey, guys. Sorry, everybody, Eugene calling in tickets. You guys can get up to Woodburn this week.
not complaining, because we now in Woodburn, a
Not
year
stating the fact.
in advance. That we
And
gotta
we've
tell
had
them.
that very.
We advance a year in advance. We advance everybody a year in advance. I mean,
It
what
hit
else?
us like.
What you want me to do?
But anyways,
Nice to meet you.
you know, there's a lot of things here with this, in coming back to what Connor was saying, if the excavator hops on there and they want to be lazy and they want to extend, they stop at 750. If they stop at 750, then now it makes them regenerate, generate another ticket.
Is that, if I was to do that, like you're saying, is that, if I go, if the system breaks it down into different tickets, are those ticket dates? Everyone up to the other, they start. No, it tiers up.
No.
2 days from
It
now.
depends.
2 days from the moment that you pick
It
it.
depends. If they release them at that time, they all have the same
The
start.
same day.
If they say, okay, well, I'm gonna start this in, and over the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna do these segments. Then they could release them. They're already built into the system. They just set a release date, which holds onto the ticket until it gets to that date, and then it releases it into the system. But that requires the excavator to know and to manage that process as they go through it. If they don't do that, if they just release them, then, 10 days later, they're gonna call up for updates and
So
release them all again.
that pretty much, that's why I said 7 days. You call in today, you know in 7 days, you're gonna be with your crew here. So you were away from 10 days margin that you have the locates for it, correct? So you call in today, 2 days later. You call 7 days in advance, so you know seven days of your work.
So part of the
7 days of your work. I call my locates for 7 days. I need to board this in 7 days, 10 days before I hit the last, 7 days before I hit my last locate. And then I call it there.
So part of what you're seeing is the frustration that the excavators have,
Yeah.
and also the frustration the locators have. And what really needs to happen is say, okay, we both gotta work together here, we both gotta give a little bit. How can we make what we have available to us now work better? It'll never get perfect.
No, and I'll tell you this, I work with my locators, their locators, they are great. Communication is number one. our excavators, they're calling by name their guys. So that kind of relationship they have with the locators, hey, call whatever, Mike, or whatever. Whoever's in that area, they know each locator name, and they have a very good communication with the locator. Sometimes, things to be brought up and put down.
I was gonna say for your contractors. Frank hit the nail on the head. We keep saying excavator here and we keep saying locator here. We forget of the lines of management between those two also. And when we have a piece of equipment go down here, or we got a superintendent that gets sick here, it's not simply the effect of these two parties with poor communication or not working together. It's the system in general, because there's so many things. And I'm very fortunate where I sit in my company and the ones I'm helping, that I'm outside the actual bubble per se. And I can see the frustration taking place. And every day it's a new frustration of, well, this group called in sick, but now they all have flu. Or, hey, you brought out 3 pieces of equipment, you said that were repair service and ready to go. 2 of them didn't have oil or hydraulic fluid. And all this adds then to these frustrations here, because you got people ready to do work, but the support meetings are. And that's why, like I said, the best thing we can do is keep talking and talking and trying to make the system better. But really, what's the best thing all of us bring it down is bringing more patience. We've got to strive for patience anymore, because none of us have the resources, financial or human. So,
No, I was just gonna speak to that, mentioned before with supply chain and turnover and, just the workforce the way it is and the trends that are, with the great resignation, all that work, this is not gonna necessarily get easier. So maybe we should look into like different business schools for the software, or what options we have to come to some sort of middle ground, because even if you have the best communication with your team, if Bob or whoever's out sick, or there's turnover, you've got to account for those times where you might have a new crew, a new superintendent, all the communication was supposed to somebody else. So how do you pick up those pieces?
into the lines of management. And also goes outside of the process. And what I mean by that is, I've run into some issues where, locating and marketing services hasn't been provided, and a reoccurring thing is just too late and too much work, can't make it. And the next question drops and it completely gets silent. Is when I ask, well, how many of your own personnel within your company are trained to provide locating services? Here's the pin drop. Because they're not, that utility isn't thinking operationally outside of their specific content. So I'm patient, but I'm also looking at the utility's ability to send out the crew, train them up, look for abnormal operating conditions. And when they do get hit with a surge, okay, we're not going to go put in that gas service. So we're not going to go do those ground routes on the floor. We're going to go locate and get this number down. And the utilities are not managed that way. And so when I'm looking at enforcement, alternative enforcement actions, it's outside of that management and looking outside of what we have here. But how are they managing that contract? One of the things in the DIRT report said, there's got to be fair contracts between locators and the utilities. And looking at that, going, okay, what's fair? You know the wave's coming. How many people are you prepared to answer that wave? And just experience with asking that question, it needs to be developed. Just to balance this whole thing. No, exactly. I think that's exactly what we spoke to so many times, as we all know. We don't have those resources to draw upon.
So we're talking about the length of the ticket.
No, we just talked about dealing with the whole situation, because we're not throwing your numbers back, some of the forecast for next year and the following year, because you're looking at the workforce. Yeah, are we trying, I mean, can we make the system better and efficient? But also the other part of the other issue is the company engaged in looking at this and managing it? And that's something that the report highlighted. Started asking the questions, and it was eye-opening. Well, I didn't think about sending the welder out to do the things. He's trained to do it. We're like, oh, okay, let's get these located.
Okay. Thank you. Well said. Do we have anything more on that?
Just to confirm, NXT doesn't break tickets down any different than what the call center does. It can draw as long as, always on as they want, as long as it doesn't cross the county line. If it crosses county line, then that would be triggered. If it's continuous.
If it's continuous, right, and that's the way it's always been. You know, and earlier you said, you know, white paint, would make well, you know, certainly look that well, on that 50-mile location. They just go put a bracket at the end of Joseph Street, you'll see ideal there. Drive up to Detroit, put a bracket on there, they were awesome, by the look, they say, hey, guess what? Yeah, we're on the Ace or, you know, but I'm just saying that that's all they have to do, but they got the. But at least it forces them to do something about it, or maybe even think about it, say, wow, I'm not here to make them about that. Get them out there in the field. There's a lot of things here. There's a lot of pieces to consider, but like Rick said, it's the low hanging fruit, and it really is. So.
I just have one comment and because we're talking about, you know, I think the white pen and the length of the ticket, they're kind of tied together. And depending on what kind of project you have, I mean, I have projects that I should not even require to put white paint. I'm doing from the pedestal outside the right of way in the private property, but I'm doing it anyway. And then, you know, talking about white paint to make it, we're gonna discuss if we want to make it mandatory or not. Most of the bigger company and most of the contractors and most of the excavators are, I mean, 90% of them are using white paint. They all put white paint. Just a little things. I think just to make it mandatory, it's an escape for a locator to stay away. If I have a job that does not require that, and the description actually makes sense, or any other, you know, like mandatory white line, white line, it makes sense. That's my thought about going to your next subject. Like,
With that, we're jumping to the white paint. I think to go back really quick, just to sum up what we talked about, and I know that you mentioned it, Connor. If the system, we constructed the system to generate a new ticket after 750 feet. They could call that long ticket in, and unless we said do not auto generate, you know, and then prompt them, you need to call in or you need to submit another ticket for another 750 feet. You know, it would just auto generate. So you really just defeat the purpose unless they, which they're not. I'd like to get data on who is going in NXT and then putting release dates out. I would like to see that because I don't think that that's taking place yet. I think it's something in the future that they'll start using, but I would be surprised to see them excavator we're using. And it would be actually ideal for those that are on those projects to say, okay, we're not going to be here till then, or you know, within your work delay that you guys do, which is great. You know, I'm not going to be out there for 3 days, so I'm going to call it, you know, 5 days out. So I'd just be surprised if we do have late release or delayed release tickets to the board.
We have it available to you.
Right,
But
right. We do, but a lot of that has to be, you know, educated, and we have to get to that point. Honestly, I don't see us getting anywhere with this. I don't think we can keep it on the docket. I could pass it on to Jessica as a working item. I just don't see us getting anywhere with it right now. And I mean, you can't put a restriction on excavators that are not chartered, or the mission is to prevent damages, yes, but not regulate how much footage an excavator can call in a day's time. So we can put parameters around that, but a lot of. Right. Right, yeah, but are we willing to do that, and then how are we gonna go about it?
Well, I mean, that's just it, I mean, what can OCC provide as a presentation on what the system's capable of, because we just learned that XT isn't doing it. So what does the system allow us to do? Operation. And that's something that, you know,
It is doing, the system is doing, it's just not doing it for continuous, continuous.
that's what I mean.
Right,
Can we
okay.
really do that?
That's what.
No, I mean, can we, I think we can do it with their system. I don't have any issues with that. They will do what we ask them to do, essentially. But can we really do it? Can we put those parameters in place without making?
Yes.
We
It's an
did it.
operational policy. There was,
Not only single amendment, it's the board's function to
governed,
operate one clause. But how we choose to operate through business rules is within the power outside of COAR.
it's no different than the rule that says if these two poles are more than 750 feet, you have to break them up on a ticket. It's no different than that.
Right.
That's what was agreed upon, and that's what we did historically.
It's like when we said, hey, OUCC, we want to know when HDD contractors are using correctional drill equipment. That's an operation.
So let's say if let's hypothetically say the committee was in agreement, that's not what I mean, to recommend to the board that operationally, if it is found that OCC can do this, let's turn that on for 750-foot rule for continuous locates. We've already got it for, I'll use the same kind of spot here, or it's another multiple locations, different locations, 5 foot, 10 foot radius around locations, radius of locations, which is just like everybody on a right. But with that, I think, but at the same time, we have to put the stop on auto generation of it, and so like the auto generating the ticket, another ticket. So if they called in a massive amount of footage, that it would auto break those tickets up. I think my opinion would be that we'd recommend that it would break, and they would have to be forced to manually enter a new ticket themselves, rather than it being auto generated over the amount of footage that they put on there. That would be, is that what we're thinking?
I'd like to see what it would actually look like. If that's something to see you have presented, just kind of walk through. I know what I see from the excavator side.
Here's what I would suggest. We can go back and we can see what the other states do, because I think most of the other states that we operate in don't allow 10-mile tickets. We just don't. They break them down, especially with the NXT team into effect. They broke the tickets down smaller. Nobody's turned off the auto-generated tickets because
Yeah.
the thought is, why do you want to punish the excavator?
And
to
you are
use an
gonna tell
online
me,
system?
yeah. I cannot do this.
So, but the other thing we can do is maybe the next step, if from that, you got some idea what you might be looking at, we could run historical data against that footages to see what that does impacts volume wise of tickets, so You know that. You know, that you have. 1,000 tickets that exceeded the 750 feet that went through the system last year. This is what it would look like. If you broke it down.
And we did do that, and what the problem was is that the work description was the only area that we could get that information from. And a lot of the time, but now, with now, you've got the exact distance. That's now data rather than a populated, sheet over there, but like a remarks section. Description area, yeah, where you have to actually, so that was the big pull, was that data, because a lot of the work description was so long. So
You still have the, you would break it, you would look at the polygon to see what the polygon. I don't know, you might.
we couldn't, because of the way the old system was, is that it could have been, that we couldn't go off with the polygons, because, sometimes there was, egregious, right? A lot of times.
That's true.
And so all we could go on is that the work description and what it would say. So that was very grueling for
Still
me.
polygons, and still the polygons that are generated through a call are notification polygons when they're not worksite polygons. There's a difference. A lot of people confuse that when you're talking about, that's somebody using the wrong tool. They're thinking notification boundary instead of where am I doing the work? And there's a difference. If you use the route tool or a big polygon tool instead of those points, never going to work well. So
I think we could get closer to looking at the data, real data that is viable. Because I see tickets, every ticket that I look at, every one of my lookers clicks the link, and they put on their form, and they look at that, and I would say 75% of the time, it's up the ticket.
it's what
It's up the ticket, not for notification. It is up the ticket. So there are those, they're still, of course, practicing what they used to, but for the most part, I can honestly say 75% are doing it right. And it hasn't taken that long at all. And that's the impressive part for them to do it that way. So I think we could get some type of data from that if we wanted to look at it, from how many tickets were actually called over. So in that way. But you got to understand where I come from on this one, because we've had this in committee for long. We've gone back and forth on it. So
I think there's a reason for that.
well, I know what the reason is. We're waiting for that. This time last year, recommended by Kevin this time last year, that we wait until NXT gets rolled out and we wait for that data. Right, so we're talking about it now, right?
Another question, where's the data?
we can get that together.
Right, we were just going over that. It could probably be a better look than it did prior.
I'm trying to query the system right now. It's still working for months.
So what I will do is I'll go back and have Scott give it the GMs and get description of what all the states that we cover, how they break up tickets. Some of them break up different depending on, whether they're urban or rural, because there is a difference. And see what other states do. And then also go back and since NXT, which was what, July 30th. That we maybe
Right.
We can look at the polygons since then and see what the number of polygons and the size of those polygons and see if breaking them down by something we pick, what that does volume wise.
And I do have data. If we could add other states, I do have that data too. It's just on what states have a threshold.
Pretty much all of them do.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of them have something smaller.
So
Some dictated by law, some not.
Which I think is a good point in and of itself, that we are outlining, that we don't have size restrictions. That's a really good. We're not in line with the industry.
also,
Or the fact that you guys are still talking about this. Tired of probably talking about this.
Well, I'm
but
done
it's
talking about
obviously-
it. Well, that's chair.
They might continue, so at least now we have, a year later, we'll have data, we can look at it. And
Okay,
you can keep.
okay, so we'll move forward with it, leave it on.
Mhm.
And wait for some data. Thank you, Frank. For
Why are you
sticking
gonna
around,
cover that?
because we've been dead in the water. See, that's why that guy gets awards.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we'll move on to, I think briefly, I want to get out of here for 3:30 here. So, like I had mentioned earlier, we do have white paint. White paint is mandatory, and it is in our manual. But there's an out, and there's an exception to it. As long as the description is clear on the ticket, you don't have to mark it in white. There's-
Where,
Right, right,
Well, what is white paint?
mark right away, right away.
Are we looking at?
Which right of way to which right of? I mean, are we on
Is this a
Jefferson Street
bracket?
going to Main Street? Huh?
Is this a bracket? That's the last time you guys told me.
I just think it's silly that it's industry, known industry widely, to say that on a ticket, right of way to right of way.
Edge on the road.
Yes, or just right of way. The right of way is this point, that one.
So we'll just be in conjunction with. On NXT, if I was to go in and put my volume on, then. Also put brackets. I know what we do, we always put brackets around everything, just because we're with the locators, we want to make sure they get out. Get out there. But would that be in conjunction with? If I have the polygon on my pole, I have to also go out there for.
Yes. Because we're not there yet, we discussed this already, we're not there at the virtual stage. So my note for our last meeting that we had, was that, we're not there yet for a virtual Wi-Fi.
We're not there as a excavator or as a locator.
We have a-
Or as a utility, yeah. I don't know, give me.
Okay. All right. So we did talk about how some are still using it as a, notification boundary. They're still using the idea of how they did it prior. We, like I just said, there's 75% that are using it like that, but we cannot take it down to the street level. Okay, a lot of locates have to be, you can't zoom in eagle eye down to the street level and see, or you need to be as far as that. Yes. You can click on Google car, what you have the street. Yes, but truck, have you done that with the polygon with the actual line there? Yeah, they ask for the center line, that puts it, when you zoom in that far, it puts it all the way over another side of the street. So, oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. We can actually pull it up. I'm not saying it moves, I'm just saying that when, okay, so you have a few, you guys are probably the greatest at it. And I'm not saying that just so you don't disagree with the rest of the meeting.
I will, anyway.
I'm just saying that you really do have guys that have done a heck of a job of only covering the west right of way. And then doing that on the polygon itself. But once they get into the convoluted areas where the road turns or, so that, they're at least putting it in the prescription, so we know that's what they mean, because then it starts to overlap into the middle of the intersection and things like that. If the tool is fine, and it's not any disrespect to the, NXT, I think if we can get there at some point with technology, I just don't know if we're there, and I think we agreed upon that last meeting. Actually, no, it's. Right,
your suggestion?
For white paint, it should be mandatory. I believe that we should separate it from homeowners and excavators. All excavators should be required to mark it white. And that was a poll that, and we could do this again. I can reach Jessica on it and get the board's opinion on it, but that's why we have a motion to start language for white paint, mandatory white paint, to revise it and make it mandatory. We have a motion.
For all locations,
For all locates,
any emergencies.
including emergencies.
How are you rolling out on a water service place? We don't have everybody on site yet.
you can't call your ticket in until your guy gets on site. So saying it's what, take down.
I'm saying it's gonna force us to do that. Yeah, it's gonna force us to make sure that we are marking the right, correct area. And not, and I'll tell you right now, to what you're saying, we have a lot of emergencies. And,
Even a gas.
and I'm just gonna pick on Melanie here. My locator didn't answer the call. And so I got the call from dispatch, and it's been years when I put the boots on and I went out there. And PPL was on site, and I'll have to say this, and I will say this for record, that was the nicest crew of all of my career being in the field that I've ever met. And there were some really great guys, but they didn't know where the fault was. And so they said, call from this end of the street to that, mark from this end of the street, not that end of the street. And so I did. And then they said, wait a second, we're probably gonna have to call another locate over here. Our crew isn't here to thump this shit. They didn't find the fault, they gotta thump it, of course, right? So we just need that whole other part of the block over there. And I said, well, I'll be here for it. Actually, I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna have him leave, but he's gonna come and he's gonna sit here. Do not call another ticket. When you're ready to dig in the area that you're ready to dig in. And I didn't tell him I was management or anything like that. I'm just a locator. I said, then we can agree on that locator. Because otherwise, we're out here marking this entire neighborhood up because your guy isn't out here to film. And that's just the nature of the industry right now, as far as emergencies go. So first responder is always. PG's really good at being there. PBO is too. I just think that they don't task their eagles with that kind of stuff.
So normally how it works, if we have an emergency, is the trouble will go out, emergency. And then the crew comes out and that's when, so the troubleman is the one that actually calls in the ticket usually, not. So they don't know they don't know where the ticket.
See crew on site. I mean, we can.
Exactly what you see.
Yeah, and that's what, instead of mark the 5th Street, 6th Street, that's what we should be seeing. So I'm not taking anything away from your saying, because I understand.
So it's single family residence.
Yeah.
Contact with that. And somebody's out there, build a shed, they get someone's water. That is without service, but you come out here, from the water. When can the directional drill back on or that's whatever. When can we call that?
When you have the job.
We're on our way.
I just mean that, we get 2 or 3 in Salem, where we'll get it from, and I'm just,
Yeah.
this guy, and you know that. That's, you know what I'm saying? So who's doing the work actually? I mean, so that, again, that answers it. If you're actually doing the digging and you're gonna put a lot of paint, then hopefully you're the one that, is actually gonna do the shot or do the, work there. Because we do get multiple locates for this.
What if, in this type of a scenario, somebody calls the contractor, whoever it is, calls up again, some directional drill guy. Says, hey, I got water to the surface. You guys without service. I need you out here this afternoon. As soon as possible. When can we call that in?
You should be able to call it immediately, because my question is, did you mark it in white paint? The law states we got to mark in white paint, so if they're the plumber, they should have marked that in white paint.
They should have.
What,
But is it Connor's job to reach that guy and say, I can't work for you until you put white paint down? Yeah.
No, but I think it's gonna be general common knowledge. I think that's something to learn.
so why do you, as a locator, you cannot read the description? You must have white paint on a job? Because that's the first question that you're gonna ask, that's the first question that you ask him. You have white paint on the job. You didn't ask him, what's the description, where you're gonna dig? I mean, that should be the first one in your mind, not white paint. Your first thing you should ask, what's the description that you're gonna dig? And he's gonna say exactly the description. And then you're gonna ask him, okay, I don't understand your description. Can you white paint?
I think, but
You got it upside down.
what Mike is gonna say is, they're not gonna tell you where they're gonna dig, they're gonna tell you to mark out the front yard. He would like to have something there.
Oh, there, there's a situation when I bury cables to properties, and I'm not even gonna white paint it, I'm gonna tell the locator to locate the whole property. If I'm talking residential property, 50-foot wide. And for different reasons. I'm not gonna send
You may
it,
not know where you're going.
yeah,
Well,
because I don't know where I'm
I'm gonna be
going.
dictated on what gets
Yeah.
marked. If you're putting in a table drop,
That's what I'm saying.
you can't just draw a white line. And to the closest
Yeah, but
corner of the
again,
house.
if you guys, it's abusing the resources based on the law. So you're saying, mark this 1,000 feet from the street, because I don't know where it's at.
I'm not talking
Now,
about.
you marking trees, it's not-
Here's the scenario that I was explaining. I'm just saying, look, there's no way to regulate how much footage or how many locates an excavator can call, right? There's not, and I'll say this many times. But what you're saying is, I understand the argument, I really do. But can we get it to where we can get more locates completed, more facilities protected? And the only way we're gonna do that is getting that white paint in this precise area, so we can really shake hand for it. So we can move on from that job to the next.
Because it's not the one in the way.
Okay, well then tell us a way. Show us the way.
I understand that.
Don't shake your head without telling us, show us the way.
I mentioned it earlier, it's outside of, this is a company that have the resources to get those locates that are overdue. And that's a real issue that needs to. But this group doesn't need to go down, but that is a fact, it's not that whether white paint is there. And it is a real big problem when someone says, well, there's white paint there and I'm gonna, whether I'm gonna do the job. Yeah, when we're trying to protect life and property here. The rule's clear that white paint is required. If the directions aren't clear, paraphrase that, but that is there. Love to see some data on how many times white paint is mentioned in the local. Trying to pull that up right now, but it's still spinning. Or what is meat on site? Is that almost better than white paint?
Do it. Really? If you meet the locator with the excavator on site, I mean, you can have as many.
We don't regulate how many locates are allowed to be put in. So how gonna meet? I'm just saying, if we don't, let's talk about that before. We were here, now we're gonna use meat time instead of white paint. No way.
No, you mentioned,
An emergency locate. Okay. Emergency locate, in
Yes.
that scenario,
Yes.
meat on site, absolutely better than.
than anything else.
Or, if you have resources and everything is ironed out. Workload allows it, yeah, meet on site. I cannot determine the exact location of it. We need to go put white paint on. How many times is that?
I don't
The
know.
law is there, it's there. How many times is it being used? How many locates are being rejected saying, this isn't clear to me, I need white paint, it's there.
But then that's creating an additional
Yeah.
delay as opposed to having it in the law to already have. like,
Right, there's
there.
liability
But then
there,
you're
that's why-
encouraging better behavior by saying, this is the law.
And you will encourage. that.
The interpretation is up to the person who reads.
Like these cable drops in, if you draw a straight line from the bed to the closest corner of the house. And when you come back 2 days later. You want to install that, and there's a power across the driveway. And you can't break open that driveway. That cable drop in. So now you're gonna change directions, you're gonna go up the side of the driveway and then over this.
You can,
Now
because you gotta recall locates
You gotta
again.
call another, and that's gonna jam me up too.
And then it's not only that, I
So-
explained that over
So
and
that's
over and
why
over.
just family residence, your property, maybe it's a 10,000 square foot max, I don't know.
You have to understand, 10,000 or 100,000.
You're gonna block that, right?
Well, what if we incorporate that 750 feet? And then use the white paint as if it's over, 750 feet. But then we'd be looking at what constitutes getting a definition in on large project language. I know we tried to do that in the last revision, was I don't know if it's naturally adamant about it, and they push that quite a bit, to let's put a footage on what is considered large project. I think they could tell with that. But it's a good point.
Right, may be able to give you some information, why uses larger projects. And I don't think it's working well. I've not seen it.
I'd be interested to see what Frank can do with large project and the number of members associated with that local ticket. Say you have a large project out rural Oregon that's got members. You really want to, limit that down to 750 feet. But
There's only two members.
But only in Portland, if you have a large project that's 50 feet, 750, and you have 20 members, maybe that would make sense. Not base it just on footage alone, but the number of members that are affected by the work.
You wouldn't know that though until you set that standard with the footages, because that's what drives that list.
But we can make your system move. Well, I'm saying there's a correlation there. It doesn't, to make sense of how many members are impacted.
In downtown Portland, by in some of those areas, you may do one intersection that has 20 members.
Yeah, exactly. And is that gonna meet the 750 threshold? No. Is that a huge project for who? So I think it's worth discussion. I'd love to see some data about the right thing issue.
Yeah.
Not just the raw data that is trying to spin out of the system right now. See what's there. For more tapeage.
And you mean for to say a remark as a remark or within.
I'm now interested in meet on site, area marked in white. I'd like to see what types of projects those are associated with. What is the presumed red flag or issue? And then also I don't think you're gonna get a footage out of the data, but you do a computation from the Latin log on 2 points, and then you may have to point. We'll make some assumptions on that. I mean, the data was just made available a month ago or so, as far as being able to pull raw data. So board members can take a look at that. It would be worth looking into. Instead of saying, we want to know this, let's take a look at the raw data and put some parameters.
What about what other states are doing as far as what as far as the industry standard?
Yeah, Washington requires it. If there's an exemption if it's an emergency, I know we went kind of down that route hole a little bit. There's an exemption if it's an emergency. It kind of makes sense, right? A lot of times,
I've argued with you then.
a lot of times there's an emergency, you're gonna end up with a crew on site, which is basically. The American Gas Association, which obviously is very specific to my industry, is coming out with a white paper. But I think would be interesting for this board to review. That's gonna outline effective elements of damage prevention. And it's gonna include information about having white lines, requiring white lines. Explaining what it is it electronic, is it physical? How can I excavator achieve that? So I don't know when the white paper is coming out, but I do know that it's working through to be published. So hopefully sometime next year.
Are you on that committee?
Upper leadership from my company on that.
Oh.
Okay.
Kansas doesn't have white lining, but it is something that they can. But the way they're gonna phrase it is. Well, I think white paint or electronic. White line is how they phrase it. So they're proposing we're talking about proposed legislative changes, and that's how we're phrasing that. Montana, I don't think has it. I think they highly suggest it. We asked the question, but I don't think they have it. Hawaii has it. With a very specific out, and that is if it's impractical to put white lining down. An example would be if it requires, for example, traffic control or something, a congested area, and it's not feasible to do traffic control.
There's some serious worker safety issues.
And utilities can refuse to do a locate that is not white marked. But the problem with that is some on that ticket may refuse to do it, some on that ticket may go ahead and mark, and then it confuses things. Because they don't handle it the same. I don't remember. I don't remember.
Well, we should even know how to know.
Go ahead.
I think it's another example of where we're kind of becoming an outlier
Right.
in Oregon. That a lot of states are moving towards this as well as.
How are we an outlier? It's in our rule already.
Yeah.
We don't know how often it's used.
Because the practice right now is to give a clear, precise description. And it's not always clear and precise, but I think that that's just been the accepted practice. I'll put that verbiage in there. I don't have to white mark it. And there isn't necessarily that buy-in of how clear is that verbiage. I think that largely that's kind of just the approach that we see. I'm gonna put in whatever description I'm gonna put in, that's gonna be good enough.
Are we?
Not, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but I don't need to white mark it because I put it in the description.
Do we have a lot of known white mark on the ground? Micah?
And that, what I'm, just a quick second, we do for certain things. With that, that ties directly into, whether or not, if they're not out there marking a white paint, they're just calling this big blanket. Okay, if they're actually going out there, they're going to put, the white paint in the area that they need it. So, I mean, I don't know where, I mean, I get a real big feeling here that we would like to regulate operators, but I mean, that's tough, that I do get that feel. I know that's you guys, I know that's your job, but, as a board, we gotta go off, you know, what we're chartered here to do, and I understand that part of it, Kevin, but, the resources are the resources, and it's lopsided. And I'll always stick.
It's not something that we've been asked, but it is becoming an issue. As you know, more utilities are trying to save on services and so forth, but there's a real concern with utility safety and reliability that you see covered with that. Again, are these contracts fair? Are we training enough personnel to deal with these issues? Those are questions that haven't been directly asked before, well, just recently. And it is going to have, it is going to happen.
Sure. Yeah, it's a lot of ask.
Oh,
It's a lot of ask from anyone saying, hey, look, we got unpredictable, you know, ticket.
it's, you know, when the peaks are hit, you know when the peaks hit.
I do.
The utilities know it as well.
So. With the white paint, again, I'll give a good briefing to Jessica on where we stand, concerning white paint. I think if we could get that information, I'd like to see, not only, we know that other states have it, but is there else? Do they have else? And if we can get that data, then, you know, maybe we're not an outlier, maybe we're in the same boat as those others they do have. And I don't mean that an exception. I mean, like, you either market a white paint or.
Is this briefing that's gonna occur supposed to be a public meeting, so it is for business?
No, no, it's just me handing the piece of paper. and
I
saying,
would
this is our notes.
recommend taking over. Well, no, you're briefing, but going to meet with Jessica.
The next, yeah.
I'm
It's
concerned
not
that
very
it's-
common practice for us to do that. Is it a public meeting that is required when the existing executive committee needed to meet with the onboarding executive committee? Is there, should that be a public meeting?
For informational purposes, one-on-one, I think it's accepted. I think if it's 3 or more, and if it could lead into business decisions, then it's public meeting, so we can get clarification, but I think you're in good speed.
I would recommend it since this is for business stuff.
It's, even if it's informational in nature rather than business decision.
Well, you can give her all the information on the next meeting in Wilson.
Well, there's the meeting minutes from this.
And she's gonna be the new chair, or she's not here.
As far as fact finding, I think that's a separate thing, but this is a business item. From one chair to another, I think it might deserve a question on this. If we're not gonna err on the side of it.
I'll make it public. I've made it public before. I have a list of what I've kept each meeting on where we're at, what progress we've made in certain areas. I have to admit, the last 3 meetings, I haven't kept up on that, but it is running log. And it does have a letterhead on it that I have offered to the committee for the minutes prior. So I'll get that updated. And everything that I speak to her about will be in. That's all it is a brief on where we're sitting. As far as the committee and our discussions, where we're at. We reinvent the wheel a lot of the times here for newcomers and then. Same thing. All right. I don't have anything down for new business.
So is there anything I need to do? Is there anything?
For white paint,
Yeah,
I was hoping that we could get. What other states participate or have a law. And only, really, I think the only ones we're worried about is those that require it without the caveat of 4. So we have the,
I'm gonna tell you, they probably all have an.
well, I mean, that's not an out though. Washington's not an out. I wouldn't consider Washington, that's just an exception to.
It's impractical.
Sorry?
If it's impractical, that's not enough.
No, I mean, that's just one, that's a business, I mean, that's a separate scenario, like an emergency ticket is different. If they require to mark.
He's talking about
Washington is not good.
Okay.
Washington is used for people.
Right.
And
Which is the,
Okay, all right,
yeah,
okay, that's
I
the,
mean-
okay. So it's not,
it's really not it's a good example of. It makes it really tough. We've got big law, the contractor, fence guy, and put his white paint down, it wasn't feasible. There's a lot that happens. You know, but it wasn't feasible to.
I would hate to task you with that. I think we can, work within our resources here and figure out. I'd hate to task you with that. I just leave you with the data,
so you said something though about delegating a certain question, is it more than like, yes or no?
That's Kevin's request.
No, if the data comes up, it shouldn't be a problem. So I'm not making that ask, right?
Okay.
I'll let you know if the data doesn't come up.
I think we'll do our due diligence. I think that's important. Find out what states, what it means. I think that's a lot of work there. I'll do it. Okay. Thank you. Frank, for clarifying. I appreciate that. I don't show anything for new business, nor do I for old business. Was there anything that we were adding? I think there was something, right, that we.
We have a discussion about. If the ticket's gonna be late,
Right.
would be not compliant if you didn't have a written, so. I think it's pretty clear that. Yes, you'd be not compliant. Frank pointed out that they don't automatically. populate the start time for a job. So if the start time would be on them 2 full business days, that could technically be considered a written agreement that excavators agreed they're not gonna start. So maybe say it's 4 days after, that's a written agreement that you can take up to that full business days to mark that. Right? So if excavators are putting their start time later than 2 full business days, that could potentially be
We
utilized.
don't allow that. We do. We do allow that to
You
be.
took off the generated start time.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
that-
that's in the
That's what I'm
remarks.
talking about.
Okay, so that's in the remarks. Yeah, they're putting it in the remarks. We used to. Just so.
So I think that could be considered, by a facility owner. As then the legal start time of that excavation site, which could alleviate some of those concerns about marking.
Right,
If the excavator actually,
and we take that, as soon as it's on the ticket as a remark, an emergency comes in. On Saturday. For repairing the water circuits, and they don't need the marks till Tuesday. And it literally says it in the remarks, yeah, we're gonna take that as a written document. Confirmation, they don't need marks until Tuesday. Without us even putting anything on our. The notes on. as a document.
You're probably not gonna disagree with that.
No. My guys were like. But. Because it'll still, in our system, we color code things, red, of course, is, so it'll still show red form until it actually gets that form. But okay, do we, so was it more of a question that needed to be answered? I think what we discussed is that, we'll bring it into committee and is it something that we want to clarify? Is it we want to continue discussion on? Okay, we have a no.
I mean, don't ask me, ask her, because she was the one. She asked the question, do you want this, do you want this item to bring back in the committee and discuss?
Well, this is where things go to live or die right here. So it's been done.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
but maybe more consideration. Put it to a later time, so
Put it on the
see
agenda.
if there is something that would improve that.
So, yes or no, does it need to be discussed in the next, or you wanna? Gosh, it,
Should we,
okay,
should we?
right there, no. She's,
Squash.
she was the, she was the
That's
one that
not
asked
the clock,
for
or
it,
is
she
it-
said, leave it, put it,
All right,
it's good.
so we're going to the ballot. So it's squashing it. It is. It is. Okay, moving on. Anything for the good of the order? I appreciate everyone. I do. I really do. I walk away from this meeting, every meeting I have, I never walk away from the meeting. I never walk away from a meeting angry or upset or going to vent about it. You get work here. Never, absolutely never. It's business. It's something that I know it's just bureaucracy. So it's.
Hey, Michael,
We'll give
thank
what we
you
need to
for
get.
being the chair for so many, you did a great job,
Thank you.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
All of this could not do it without you, all this OAR and everything that I remember we did and, the committee did with you. Starting with, the new standard manual, the tolerance zone, the new discussion, in PUC building so many times we met over there. And we talked about this and that, and great job. Thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Seriously, I wish you could stay more.
I'm gonna be here. I'm just not gonna be at home.
Well, next time,
That's
I'm gonna
good.
be here, gonna be on the other side, and I'm gonna be the chair, so I can argue.
That's just,
Not just.
I think that'll be a good transition for you.
I think so too.
Good. Thank you for giving the meeting under 15 minutes.
Yeah, the miracle worker. I like that. Awesome. Okay,
Oh,
so
you need a motion to.
yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
No.
Second.
So, hold up. We do have our next meeting, and I know that you mentioned that, this is pretty tough. This is tough, so, do we want to wait until we make a decision in January on how we're going to go about, our committee meetings, or do we want to go ahead and schedule one right after the board meeting? Where are we gonna be?
Wilsonville, January 11th on my birthday.
I'd like 2 meetings.
You have what? 2 meetings?
So,
So we wouldn't even discuss changing, or put you in the C and the OAR meetings until March, so.
okay,
It's
so
up
what
to
I'll-
you guys.
I'm gonna remove this right here, so we will not have a pre-scheduled meeting. I'm going to hand this over to our chair.
Yep.
And then, let me make that decision.
There you go.
We have a motion to adjourn. We have a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
'Cause I know there's no discussion. Any
We're
opposed?
keeping the meeting under 20 minutes.